The art of disappearing. Olivia Bennet had mastered something most people never thought to learn. She knew how to disappear while standing right in front of you. For 4 years at Sterling Enterprises, she had occupied the same desk by the window on the 12th floor. The spot that caught the morning light just right. The place where she arrived every day at 7:15 and left at 6:30. Always the same routine. Always the same careful distance from everyone else. She wore clothes in shades of beige and gray. Colors that blended into office walls. Her auburn hair stayed twisted into a neat bun. Her voice stayed soft and measured. She never joined the Friday afternoon gatherings at the wine bar down the street. She never participated in the birthday celebrations that filled the break room with cake and awkward small talk. Olivia simply did her work with a precision that bordered on artistry. But underneath that carefully constructed invisibility lived a mind that could see patterns others missed completely. While her colleagues struggled through quarterly reports, Olivia could glance at a spreadsheet and spot the story hidden in the numbers. She could predict market shifts 3 months before they happened. She could identify failing investments before the losses appeared on any balance sheet. Her supervisor, Thomas Crawford, had built his entire career on her insights. He would read her detailed analyses, nod thoughtfully, then present her conclusions in meetings as if they had sprung from his own brilliant mind. Olivia never objected. She told herself that recognition did not matter. That staying invisible meant staying safe. That speaking up would only invite attention she did not want. The storm that changed everything. The announcement came on a Monday morning in September. Sterling Enterprises had been struggling for 2 years. Revenue declining. Clients leaving. The board of directors had finally acted. They brought in someone new to turn the company around. Someone with a reputation for saving failing businesses and transforming them into industry leaders. Harrison Cole walked through the lobby doors at exactly 8 o'clock that first day. Olivia happened to be getting coffee from the 3rd floor break room when she saw him. He stood talking with the security team. Tall and confident in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His dark hair showed touches of silver at the temples. His presence commanded attention without him saying a single word. Something about him made Olivia's carefully built walls feel suddenly fragile. She hurried back to her desk with her coffee and tried to focus on the financial projections she had been reviewing. But her hands shook slightly as she typed. Change was coming. She could feel it in the air like electricity before a thunderstorm. The meeting that shattered her world. The all-staff gathering happened that afternoon. Every employee packed into the main conference center on the ground floor. Olivia chose a seat in the very back corner. Her laptop open. Her notebook ready. Her entire being hoping to remain unnoticed in the crowd of 200 people. Harrison stood at the front without notes. Without hesitation. He spoke about excellence and accountability. About the difference between going through the motions and actually caring about your work. His voice carried conviction that made people sit up straighter in their chairs. Mediocrity ends today, he said, his eyes scanning the room. Sterling Enterprises will become great again. But that requires every single person in this building to show up with their best work. Not acceptable work. Not good enough work. Your absolute best. Olivia felt something twist in her chest. She gave her best work every single day. She poured her heart into every analysis and every report. But her best work lived in shadows. Filed away in folders that Thomas presented as his own achievements. For the first time in 4 years, her invisibility felt less like protection and more like a prison of her own making, the moment everything fell apart. 3 weeks later, Harrison announced individual department reviews. Every team lead would present their quarterly results directly to him. No exceptions. No substitutes. When Thomas learned their presentation fell during his planned vacation to the Bahamas, he barely glanced up from his phone. "Olivia, you will handle it," he said casually, already mentally on the beach. Just show him the numbers. You know them better than anyone. Knowing the numbers and presenting them to the most intimidating man she had ever encountered were two completely different things. Olivia spent 5 days preparing. She created backup slides and contingency plans. She rehearsed in her apartment until her neighbor knocked on the wall asking her to please stop talking to herself. She even practiced in front of her goldfish, Austin, who seemed deeply unimpressed with her presentation skills. Nothing prepared her for the actual moment. The presentation. The executive boardroom on the 20th floor felt like another world. All glass and steel and expensive artwork that probably cost more than her car. Harrison sat at the head of the polished table. Beside him sat his chief financial officer, Victoria Sterling, and the head of operations, James Mitchell. 3 sets of eyes that would judge every word she spoke. "Ms. Bennett," Harrison said without looking up from his tablet. "You have 20 minutes. Please begin." Olivia connected her laptop with trembling fingers. The first slide appeared on the screen. Her mind, usually so sharp and organized, went completely blank. She stared at data she had memorized and could not remember a single word of her prepared speech. "Ms. Bennett." Harrison looked up. His eyes were an intense shade of gray that seemed to see right through her careful walls. "The quarterly results. The quarterly results show," Olivia began, her voice barely audible, "that our client retention in the Eastern markets has decreased by 12%. "Speak louder," Harrison interrupted. "No one can hear you." Heat flooded Olivia's face. She cleared her throat and tried again. Her voice cracked on the first word. She saw Victoria and James exchange a glance that clearly said this was going to be painful to watch. "The Eastern markets experienced a 12% decline," Olivia managed, her voice shaking. "This was primarily caused by 3 major clients moving to competitors who offered more flexible payment terms and faster service implementation." "When did this trend begin?" Harrison asked. 4 months ago, Olivia whispered. "And what action did your department take when you identified this pattern?" The question hung in the air like a blade ready to fall. Olivia knew the answer. She had written 3 separate reports about the Eastern market problems. She had sent emails to Thomas. She had tried to warn him that they were losing clients for reasons they could easily fix. But Thomas had dismissed her concerns. Told her she worried too much. Told her to focus on the numbers and let him handle strategy. Saying this out loud felt like betrayal. Like breaking an unspoken rule that you never made your supervisor look incompetent. "I do not know," Olivia said quietly. "The breaking point." Harrison stood up. The scrape of his chair against the floor sounded impossibly loud. "You were the senior financial analyst responsible for monitoring these accounts. You do not know what actions were taken." The words Olivia had been holding inside for 4 years suddenly wanted to burst free. She wanted to tell him about the reports Thomas never read. About the recommendations that disappeared into administrative silence. About being the invisible person whose work everyone used but nobody acknowledged. But her voice would not come. Her courage had been worn down by years of making herself small and staying quiet and convincing herself that safety mattered more than being heard. "I documented the concerns in my monthly reports," she said softly. Then added even more quietly, "but those reports were not acted upon." "Then perhaps you should have escalated your concerns beyond monthly reports that clearly no one was reading," Harrison said. His voice was not cruel but it was firm. "Or perhaps you should consider whether a role requiring proactive communication is the right fit for your skills." The silence that followed crushed the air from Olivia's lungs. Victoria looked uncomfortable. James studied his notepad. Olivia stood frozen. Her presentation only 5 slides complete. Her career possibly 5 minutes from ending. "Send me your complete analysis by end of business today," Harrison said, his tone dismissive. Include every recommendation you claim you made that was ignored. I want to see exactly what was missed and who missed it. Olivia gathered her laptop with hands that would not stop shaking. She walked out of that boardroom on legs that felt like they might collapse. She made it to the stairwell before the tears came. Hot and angry and full of 4 years of silent frustration. The decision. That evening, Olivia sat in her small apartment in the Arts District. Austin swimming peaceful circles in his bowl. She stared at her laptop screen and considered her options. She could quit. Walk away from Sterling Enterprises and find another company where she could be quietly competent and safely invisible. Start over somewhere new where nobody knew her name. Or she could do something she had never done before in her entire professional life. She could fight back. Not with anger or confrontation. But with the one weapon she had always possessed but never fully deployed. Her undeniable brilliance. If Harrison Cole wanted to see what had been missed, she would show him exactly what had been missed. She would give him an analysis so thorough and insightful and impossible to ignore that he would have to acknowledge his dismissal of her had been a terrible mistake. Olivia opened a new document and began to write. Not a defensive report. Not an excuse. A complete strategic analysis of everything that was about to go wrong at Sterling Enterprises if nobody started listening to the patterns in the data. She wrote about the Eastern market problems. The Western region vulnerabilities. The 3 major clients who were one conversation away from leaving. The competitor strategies that were slowly eroding their market position. She included solutions. Implementation timelines. Cost projections. Expected outcomes. She wrote until 3 in the morning. Fueled by coffee and quiet determination and 4 years of being invisible finally transformed into rocket fuel. When she finally hit send at 3:17, the document was 68 pages of single-spaced brilliance. She included a simple cover note that took her 20 minutes to write because her hands were shaking so badly. Mr. Cole, here is everything I recommended that was not heard. Olivia Bennett. She closed her laptop. Climbed into bed. And lay awake until dawn, uncertain whether she had just saved her career or spectacularly ended it in the most memorable way possible, the morning after. Olivia arrived at Sterling Enterprises the next morning expecting to find a termination notice waiting on her desk. Instead, she found an email from Harrison Cole. Sent at 6:30 in the morning. The subject line made her heart stop completely. Conference room C, 7:45. Come alone. She had 15 minutes. Olivia grabbed her notebook and a bottle of water because her mouth had gone completely dry. The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt like ascending toward her own judgment day. Her reflection in the polished steel doors showed a woman who looked terrified and determined in equal measure. When she pushed open the door to conference room C, Harrison was already there. Her 68-page report sat on the table in front of him. Printed out. Covered in handwritten notes in red ink. He had actually read the entire thing. Sit down, Ms. Bennett, he said without any greeting. Olivia sat. Her hands gripped her notebook so tightly her knuckles turned white, the recognition she never expected. Harrison leaned back in his chair and studied her with an intensity that made her want to look away. She forced herself to maintain eye contact. No more hiding. No more invisibility. That version of herself had nearly gotten her fired yesterday. I have been CEO of this company for exactly 4 weeks, Harrison began. His voice was calmer than it had been in the boardroom. In that time, I have reviewed hundreds of documents. Sat through dozens of presentations. Met with every department head and senior analyst in this building. He tapped her report with one finger. Your analysis is the first piece of work I have seen that demonstrates genuine strategic thinking instead of corporate box checking. This section about the Western region vulnerabilities. He flipped to page 42. You predicted a market saturation problem 6 months before it would become critical. Have you shared this insight with anyone? I included it in my monthly reports to Thomas Crawford, Olivia said quietly. And did Mr. Crawford act on your recommendation? No. Did he even acknowledge it? Olivia hesitated. Then decided that honesty had brought her this far. He said I had a tendency to see problems that did not exist. That I should focus on historical data instead of theoretical predictions. Something flickered across Harrison's face. Anger maybe. Or disappointment. He closed the report and looked directly at her. Ms. Bennett, how long have you been making yourself invisible in this company? The question caught her completely off guard. Her carefully prepared explanations vanished. I do not understand what you mean, she managed. Yes, you do, Harrison said gently. I have been watching you since that first all-staff meeting. You sit in the back. You keep your head down. You speak so quietly that people have to strain to hear you. You have been hiding your brilliance behind a mask of invisibility for so long that you have almost convinced yourself it is who you really are. Tears burned behind Olivia's eyes. Nobody had ever seen her so clearly. Nobody had ever looked past the careful camouflage to the person underneath. Being invisible felt safer, she whispered. Safer than what? Safer than being seen and then dismissed. Safer than speaking up and being told my ideas do not matter. Safer than trying and failing. Harrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight of understanding that surprised her. I know something about hiding, Ms. Bennett. I grew up in a household where being noticed meant being criticized. Where showing ambition meant being cut down. I learned early that excellence performed quietly was the only safe kind of excellence. It took me years to understand that hiding my abilities was not protection. It was self-sabotage. An offer that changed everything. Olivia looked up at him. Really looked at him for the first time. She saw past the intimidating exterior to something more complicated underneath. Someone who understood what it felt like to build walls around yourself and call it safety. I am reorganizing the analytics department, Harrison said, shifting back to business. Thomas Crawford will be transitioning to a different role. I need someone who can see problems before they become disasters. Someone who understands that data tells stories if you know how to listen. Someone willing to speak uncomfortable truths even when it is difficult. Olivia's heart started racing. What are you saying? I am saying that starting Monday, you will be Director of Strategic Analysis. You will report directly to me. Your first assignment is to analyze the proposed merger with Caldwell Technologies. This deal could either position Sterling for massive growth or become a catastrophic mistake. I need you to tell me which one it will be. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Director. Reporting directly to the CEO. Analyzing a merger that would shape the entire future of the company. Mr. Cole, I have never worked on anything that significant. I have never even attended a merger negotiation meeting. Neither had I until someone gave me the opportunity, Harrison said. The question is whether you want the opportunity or whether you prefer to stay safely invisible at your corner desk where nobody notices your brilliance. The words stung because they were absolutely true. Olivia had spent 4 years choosing safety over growth. Choosing invisibility over impact. Choosing silence over the possibility of being heard. I want the opportunity, she heard herself say. The words came out stronger than she expected. Good. You will move to an office on this floor by the end of the week. You will have complete access to all merger documents and financial projections. You will attend every negotiation meeting. And Ms. Bennett. Harrison stood, signaling the conversation was ending. When you find problems, and you will find problems, I expect you to bring them directly to me. No more hiding uncomfortable truths in monthly reports that nobody reads. Understood? Understood, Olivia said. She walked out of that conference room feeling like gravity had shifted. Like the ground beneath her feet had transformed into something both terrifying and exhilarating. The first real challenge. The Caldwell Technologies merger documents arrived in secured boxes that afternoon. Olivia sat in her new office on the 20th floor, surrounded by financial statements and legal contracts and strategic projections. The space felt too large. Too exposed. Too important for someone who had spent 4 years hiding in corners. But she opened the first box and began to read. Within 3 hours, she found the first problem. A clause buried in the operational integration timeline that would require Sterling to absorb significant technology infrastructure costs that were not reflected in any budget projection. Within 6 hours, she found the second problem. Caldwell's client contracts included termination clauses that could be triggered by a change in ownership structure. By midnight, Olivia had identified 7 major issues that nobody else had apparently noticed. Or if they had noticed, they had chosen not to mention. She sat back in her chair and stared at her notes. This merger was not just risky. It was potentially disastrous. She could write a careful report. Use diplomatic language. Soften the concerns. Make herself small again and hope someone else would take responsibility for the difficult decisions. Or she could do what Harrison had challenged her to do. She could speak the uncomfortable truth clearly and directly. Speaking truth to power. Olivia sent Harrison an email at 12:30 in the morning. No careful phrasing. No diplomatic hedging. Mr. Cole, we need to talk about the Caldwell merger. I have found significant problems that require immediate attention. Available whenever you are tomorrow. Olivia Bennett. His response came back in less than 5 minutes. My office. 7 a.m. Bring everything you found. Harrison. Olivia went home and slept for exactly 4 hours. She arrived at Harrison's office at 6:55 with her analysis organized into clear sections. Problems. Evidence. Potential solutions. Financial impact of each option. Harrison was already there, coffee in hand, looking like he had been awake for hours. Show me, he said simply. Olivia laid out her findings. She spoke clearly. She did not apologize for the bad news. She did not soften the severity of the problems. She simply presented the truth as she saw it in the data. Harrison listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. If we proceed with this merger as currently structured, what happens? He finally asked. We absorb significant unexpected costs. We lose at least 30% of Caldwell's existing clients. We struggle with technology integration for 18 months. And Sterling stock price drops by an estimated 20 to 30% within the first quarter. And if we walk away? We lose the deal. We look weak to the board. But we avoid catastrophic financial damage. There is a third option, Harrison said slowly. We renegotiate. We use your analysis to force Caldwell to address these issues before we finalize anything. It will be uncomfortable. It will create conflict. But it might save this merger and this company. Olivia nodded. That would be the best option. If Caldwell is willing to negotiate in good faith. Then that is what we will do, Harrison decided. And you will be in the room when we do it. I want Caldwell's executives to hear directly from the person who uncovered these problems. I want them to understand that Sterling has someone who actually reads the details. The transformation beginning. Over the next 3 weeks, Olivia attended merger meetings that would have terrified her 2 months ago. She sat at conference tables with executives who had decades more experience. She presented her findings to Caldwell's leadership team. She answered hostile questions with calm facts, and something remarkable happened. She stopped disappearing. She stopped making herself small. She discovered that speaking clearly about what she knew did not lead to disaster. It led to respect. Harrison watched her transformation with something that looked almost like pride. He never interrupted her presentations. He never spoke over her in meetings. He created space for her voice and then stepped back to let her fill it. They worked late most evenings, going over projections, debating strategy, arguing about risk assessment. Olivia discovered that Harrison was brilliant but also willing to be challenged. He asked for her opinion and then actually listened when she disagreed with him. One evening, they sat in his office at 9:30 at night. Rain drumming against the windows. Papers spread across every surface. "You have changed," Harrison said suddenly. Olivia looked up from the spreadsheet she was reviewing. "What do you mean?" "When I first saw you present, you could barely get words out. Now you walk into rooms full of powerful people and tell them exactly what they need to hear whether they want to hear it or not. That is remarkable growth in less than a month." "I had a good teacher," Olivia said softly. "No," Harrison shook his head. "You had courage you did not know you possessed. I just gave you permission to use it." Their eyes met across the desk. Something shifted in the air between them. Something that had nothing to do with mergers or spreadsheets or corporate strategy. Olivia looked away first, reminding herself that Harrison was her boss. That this was professional. That the warmth spreading through her chest was just gratitude for someone finally seeing her worth. But late that night, lying awake in her apartment, she could not stop thinking about the way he had looked at her. Like she was someone extraordinary. Like she mattered in ways that had nothing to do with financial analysis. And for the first time in years, Olivia wondered if maybe, just maybe, she was allowed to want something more than just being seen professionally. Maybe she was allowed to want to be truly known by someone who understood what it felt like to hide behind walls and call it protection. The thought terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. The night everything changed. The Caldwell merger negotiations reached a critical point 6 weeks after Olivia first walked into that conference room trembling with fear. After countless meetings and revisions, Caldwell had finally agreed to address most of the concerns she had identified. The deal would close in 2 weeks if nothing went wrong. Olivia stayed late that Friday evening, reviewing the final documents one more time. She wanted to be absolutely certain they had not missed anything. The 20th floor was quiet. Most people had left hours ago to start their weekends. She was so focused on the contract language that she did not hear Harrison enter her office until he spoke. "You are going to burn out if you keep working these hours." Olivia jumped, her hand flying to her chest. Harrison stood in her doorway, his tie loosened, looking as tired as she felt. "I could say the same thing about you," she replied. "It is almost 10 o'clock on a Friday night and you are still here. I saw your office light on. Thought I would check if you needed anything." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "Also thought I might convince you to take a break and have dinner with me. There is a Thai place 2 blocks away that stays open late." Olivia hesitated. They had shared working dinners before. Pizza at the conference table. Sandwiches while reviewing spreadsheets. But something about the way Harrison was looking at her now felt different. Less like a boss asking an employee to grab food and more like something else entirely. "Just dinner," Harrison said, as if reading her thoughts. "2 colleagues who have been staring at contracts for too many hours and need actual food." "Okay," Olivia heard herself agree, conversations beyond spreadsheets. The restaurant was small and warm, with wooden tables and the smell of lemongrass filling the air. They sat in a corner booth. Ordered pad thai and green curry. And for the first time in 6 weeks, they did not talk about mergers or financial projections or corporate strategy. "Tell me something about yourself that has nothing to do with Sterling Enterprises," Harrison said after their food arrived. Olivia took a sip of her Thai iced tea, buying herself time to think. She had become so good at keeping conversations professional that personal questions felt foreign. "I wanted to be a novelist when I was younger," she finally admitted. "I used to write stories constantly. Fantasy adventures. Romance. Mystery. I filled notebooks with plots and characters. What happened? Reality happened. My parents told me writing was not a real career. That I needed something practical and stable. So I studied finance because it was safe and predictable. And I convinced myself that numbers could be just as interesting as stories. Can they? Harrison asked. Olivia considered the question seriously. Yes, actually. Numbers tell stories if you know how to read them. Every spreadsheet is a narrative about choices and consequences. Every financial trend is a plot unfolding. I fell in love with finding the stories hidden in data. But sometimes I still miss making up my own stories. Harrison was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes thoughtful. I understand that more than you know. My father wanted me to be a lawyer. Join his firm. Spend my life arguing cases and billing hours. I wanted to build things. Create companies. Take risks. We fought about it for years before I finally had the courage to disappoint him and choose my own path. Do you regret it? Olivia asked softly. Not for a single day. But I regret the years I spent trying to be what he wanted instead of who I actually was. That is why I recognized what you were doing the moment I saw you. All that hiding. All that making yourself small. I spent a decade doing the same thing before I finally understood that the only opinion that truly matters is your own. The truth that scared her. They talked until the restaurant started closing. About books and childhood dreams and the moments that shaped who they became. Olivia learned that Harrison had a younger sister he adored. That he played piano when he needed to think. That he had been engaged once but called it off when he realized they were building a life that looked perfect on paper but felt empty in reality. She told him about growing up as an only child. About her goldfish Austin and her small apartment in the arts district. About the recurring dream she had where she stood in front of a crowd trying to speak but no sound came out. You found your voice though, Harrison said as they walked back to the office building where both their cars were parked. The city was quiet around them. Cool November air carrying the smell of approaching rain. Because you gave me permission to use it, Olivia replied. Harrison stopped walking. Turned to face her under a streetlight. No, Olivia. I did not give you anything. You had that voice all along. You just needed a reason to believe it was worth hearing. The way he said her name, soft and certain, made something flutter in her chest. They were standing close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. Close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him in the cool night air. Harrison, she started, not even sure what she wanted to say. He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so tender it made her breath catch. I am trying very hard to maintain professional boundaries, he said quietly. But I need you to know that every time you walk into a meeting and speak your truth with that brilliant mind of yours, it takes everything in me not to tell you how extraordinary you are. Not as an employee. As a person. Olivia's heart was racing so fast she thought it might burst from her chest. That would be complicated, she whispered. Extremely complicated, Harrison agreed. You work for me. There are rules and policies. It could damage both our careers if we handled it wrong. So what do we do? Harrison took a small step back, creating distance that felt both necessary and devastating. We finished the Caldwell merger. We proved that your promotion was based entirely on merit and talent. And then, if you still feel whatever this is between us, we figure out how to navigate it the right way. With transparency and honesty and respect for everyone involved. Olivia nodded, even though part of her wanted to forget about rules and complications and just close the distance between them. Okay, she said. We wait. 2 more weeks, Harrison said. I think I can survive 2 more weeks of pretending I am only interested in your financial analysis skills. Despite everything, Olivia smiled. Only 2 weeks. The betrayal. Monday morning arrived with a crisis that shattered their careful plans. Olivia walked into the office to find Victoria Sterling waiting by her desk. The chief financial officer looked furious. "My office. Now," Victoria said without greeting. Olivia followed her to the executive floor, her mind racing through possibilities. Had she made an error in the merger documents? Had something changed with Caldwell? Harrison was already in Victoria's office when they arrived. His expression was dark with an anger Olivia had never seen before. "Sit down, Olivia," Victoria said. "What is going on?" Olivia asked. Harrison handed her his tablet. On the screen was an email. Sent from her company email address to 3 major competitors. The email contained detailed confidential information about the Caldwell merger. Financial terms. Strategic plans. Everything that would give their competitors an advantage. "I did not send this," Olivia said immediately, her voice steady despite the fear flooding through her. "Someone used my email account. This is not real." "The IT department traced it to your computer," Victoria said. "Sent Saturday morning at 3 a.m. from your office workstation." "I was not here Saturday morning. I was home." "Harrison, you know I would never do this." Harrison's jaw was tight. "I want to believe you. But the evidence is damning. And the board is calling for your immediate termination pending an investigation." Olivia felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. Everything she had worked for. Everything she had overcome. All of it crumbling because someone had set her up. "Who else has access to my office?" she asked, forcing herself to think clearly. "Anyone with a security badge for this floor," Victoria said. "Which is about 40 people. Then we need to check the building security footage," Olivia insisted. "If I was not here Saturday morning, the cameras will prove it." Fighting for truth. The security footage showed exactly what Olivia knew it would. She had not entered the building on Saturday. But someone else had. Thomas Crawford. Her former supervisor. He had used his executive badge to access the 20th floor at 2:45 in the morning. Had entered her office. Had stayed for exactly 23 minutes. Harrison's face went white with rage when they watched the footage. "He tried to sabotage the merger and destroy your career at the same time," he said quietly. "Because you took the position he thought he deserved." "Can we prove he sent the email?" Olivia asked. "The IT team is working on it now," Victoria said. Her earlier hostility had transformed into something resembling respect. "I owe you an apology, Olivia. I should not have assumed guilt." "You were protecting the company," Olivia replied. "I understand." What she did not say was how much it had hurt to see doubt in Harrison's eyes. Even for just a moment. Even though the evidence had looked damning. The presentation that changed everything. By Wednesday, they had full proof of Thomas's sabotage. He had been arrested. The board had issued a formal apology to Olivia. The merger was back on track. But something had shifted between her and Harrison. A distance that had not been there before. A careful professionalism that felt like armor. The final merger presentation to the board was scheduled for Friday afternoon. Olivia had prepared meticulously. She would present the complete analysis. Explain how they had negotiated better terms. Show the projected benefits for Sterling. She walked into the boardroom and found Harrison already there. And in that moment, watching him straighten his tie and avoid her eyes, Olivia made a decision. She was done hiding. Done playing it safe. Done pretending that following all the rules mattered more than being honest about what she felt. The presentation went perfectly. The board approved the merger unanimously. Congratulations were offered all around. And when the room finally cleared, leaving just her and Harrison, Olivia did not leave. We did it, Harrison said quietly. The merger closes next week. Yes, Olivia agreed. And now we need to talk about what happens next. Olivia, I have been thinking about this situation. About the complications and the policies. And I think maybe we should just keep things professional. It is safer for both of us. Safer, Olivia repeated. You once told me that hiding behind safety was self-sabotage. That the only opinion that truly matters is your own. Were you lying? Harrison looked at her, his eyes full of conflict. I do not want to damage your career. If people think you got this position because of a personal relationship with me rather than your own talent, it will undermine everything you have accomplished. Then we make sure people know the truth, Olivia said firmly. We document that my promotion happened before anything personal developed. We are transparent with human resources. We follow every single policy and rule. But Harrison, I did not spend 6 weeks learning to use my voice just to stay silent about this. She took a step closer to him. I am in love with you. And I think you feel the same way. And I refuse to let fear of what other people might think stop me from being honest about that. The moment everything aligned. Harrison stared at her for a long moment. Then he started laughing. Not mockingly but with pure relief and joy. You are absolutely extraordinary, he said. Do you know that? 6 weeks ago you could barely speak in a presentation. Now you are standing here telling me exactly what you want with perfect clarity. I learned from the best, Olivia said softly. Harrison closed the distance between them. Cupped her face gently in his hands. I am completely in love with you, he said. I have been since the night you sent me that 68-page analysis and I realized I had finally met someone who was not afraid to tell me the truth. Even when the truth was uncomfortable. So what do we do? Olivia asked. We do this the right way. We go to human resources tomorrow. We document everything. We make sure there is no question about your qualifications or merit. And then we figure out how to build something together that is honest and real and worth the complications. That sounds perfect, Olivia whispered. And then Harrison kissed her. Soft and certain and full of promise. And Olivia kissed him back, no longer afraid of being seen. No longer hiding behind walls. Finally, completely, beautifully visible. 6 months later. Olivia stood in front of the annual shareholders' meeting, presenting Sterling's most successful quarter in company history. The Caldwell merger had exceeded all projections. The company had grown by 40%. And she had been promoted again to Vice President of Strategic Development. She spoke clearly and confidently. No trembling voice. No fear. Just the truth presented with the skill she had always possessed and finally learned to use. When the presentation ended and the applause filled the room, she caught Harrison's eye. He was sitting in the front row, watching her with open pride and love. After the meeting, they walked out of the building together. Hand in hand. No longer hiding what they meant to each other. Remember when you could barely speak above a whisper? Harrison teased gently. I remember a lot of things, Olivia replied. I remember thinking invisibility was protection. I remember believing my voice did not matter. I remember being so afraid of being seen that I almost missed the most important thing. What was that? Olivia stopped and turned to face him, this man who had seen her when she was invisible. Who had believed in her when she could not believe in herself. Who had loved her not despite her fears but through them. That being truly seen by the right person is not scary, she said softly. It is the most beautiful thing in the world. Harrison pulled her close and kissed her forehead. You know what the best part is, he said. You did not need me to save you or fix you or give you confidence. You just needed someone to see what was already there. You saved yourself, Olivia. I just had the privilege of watching you become who you were always meant to be. And standing there in the afternoon sunlight, Olivia realized something profound. She had spent so many years counting numbers and analyzing data and finding patterns. But the most important story had been the one she was living. The story of a woman who learned that her voice mattered. That her ideas had value. That being seen was not something to fear but something to embrace. The story of someone who discovered that love and truth and courage were not found in staying safe and invisible. They were found in the terrifying, exhilarating moment when you finally step into the light and allow yourself to be completely, authentically, beautifully known. And that was the greatest discovery of all. The end.